All right, so welcome everyone once again. So we are just getting started with our class for today. I just hope you have been following with the classes and you've been having your own personal time to practice, because that's actually what makes you a good developer, or it helps you to attain mastery at the end of the day. At least every day you should try to code. If you are just a beginner, just learning how to code, then you should be able to code daily, right? Just at least an hour a day, right? You dedicate it to learning something new about code. That's actually very important, and it's one of the things that can help you to move fast in your tech career, or in your front end, web development journey, right? So we already have some code here, and this is what we've been working with for the past few classes we've had. And as usual, I would always go through the code from beginning to end, just so that just in 5 minutes, just go from beginning to end so that we don't get to lose track on all that we've done so far, right? So also on a second thoughts, I was also thinking we could start on a fresh HTML file. This one is actually quite long, and yeah, so I think that's what we should just do. So we'll still leave our index.html here, but let's create a new HTML file, something fresh. So let's call it maybe index2.html. Right. So let's work on something fresh. Of course, we are talking about CSS. However, we need HTML to work with CSS. So like I've taught in my previous classes, there are a couple of ways you could spin out your default document structure for HTML, right? So is that you do Shift and 1, which actually brings out an exclamation mark. Then when you press enter, it actually gives you the default HTML document structure. This is what it is. Alternatively, let me just Control Z, that's to go back. Alternatively, you can type HTML colon 5 and press enter. HTML colon 5, enter. It will still give you the default HTML document structure. So we wouldn't waste much time here. We just change the title to web, or let's make it CSS, right? CSS class 2 is actually class 2. So we have our body. Body tag is actually where we are going to do all our coding. So let's just give an example with a div, right? A div. Let's give some more space so that we'll have some more space around our code, right? So we are starting with a div for this illustration. And in our previous class, we talked about inline styling, that there are 3 different ways of adding styles to your HTML code. We talked about let me just comment it here. We talked about inline styling, right? Talked about inline styling. We talked about styling with the head tag, styling with the style tag, rather, style tag within, right? within the head tag. And the third form of styling was styling using an external style sheet. Right. So sorry. All right. So styling using an external style sheet, and of course we did demonstrate how that works. Let me just give, since this is a fresh HTML sheet, let me just give a simple illustration on each of them here. Just one line. Let's just say we are dealing with a paragraph. Sorry, we actually need to write that in small letter, that's lowercase. So it's within our div. Remember, div acts like a container, right? So it's more like a division, right? Or a section of your code, right? Div, it acts like a container. That's really what it is. So let's say we want to have a paragraph within our div, a paragraph, and we want to say this is a paragraph. For example, paragraph. All right. So to demonstrate inline styling, right? So demonstrate inline styling. So let's have this inline styling. So when you say this is a paragraph for this paragraph, so inline styling is just writing the style within the opening tag, right? You write the style or you apply your styles using the opening tag of the element. So this is how the syntax looks like. Within the opening tag, right? So you add a style attribute. This is actually called an attribute. Style attributes equal to sign, double quotation mark. Then within the double quotation mark is where you get to write your style. So you can say color. For example, say you want to change the color to maybe brown or something. Brown. So let's check it out. To check it out, we open with our live server. All right, so you can see this is a paragraph and it actually takes the color of brown. That's the color we gave to it. So this is an example of styling inline, right? And just to add, if you have more styles to add to this particular paragraph inline, right? So when you have color brown, you separate styles, you separate inline styles with a semicolon, right? Semicolon. Then after the semicolon, you can now add any other style that you want to add. So maybe let's say font size. Maybe you want to just play with the font size and maybe 20 pixels, or let's make it a bit bolder. Let's say 30 pixels, for example. Okay, so we don't have that. Okay. All right. So you have style attribute, an equal to sign, opening quotation mark. Then you have the style name. So the style name in this case is color, and this is the style value. In this case here, you see brown, right? Then you separate styles, different styles. If you have more than one style to apply to a particular element, right? You separate it with a semicolon. Then from there, you're able to write the new style or the next style, the name of the style, which is font size in this case, and the value, which is 30 pixels, right? So from here, of course, you can go to where we have our code showing. So you can see that the font size has actually increased, right? So we said 30 pixels, and this 30 pixels. Here you go. Right. So this is an example of inline styling. So we did also talk about styling with the style tag within the head tag. So this is actually our head tag. The opening is on line 3, as you can see. Closing is on line 8. Right. So within this head tag, just make some space, and you have your style tag. Style tag, you close it up, then you just make some space within the opening and the closing. So here you can now input your styles, right? So this okay, so we have P style equals to color. So for this example, to demonstrate the second form of styling, let's create another paragraph, right? Another paragraph, and say this is a second paragraph. Second paragraph, right? So within this style tag, what you can do is we want to style this paragraph, right? So let's say P. We can use the style. We can use the elements. We can style the elements, right? Elements. So P is the name of the element, right? That's actually a paragraph. P for paragraph. So probably I could just still make a comment here. So remember also that comments in CSS are written with a different syntax from comments in HTML. So comments in CSS is written with a /, an asterisk, then you input your content, right? Maybe let's put a content there and say elements selector, right? So we are styling with an element selector. Then we have an asterisk /. So what is styling with an element selector? It's just when you use the tag directly to style, right? That's really what it is, element selector. So this is P, it's a tag. So if you style P directly in your style tag, like we are doing on line 11 here, that's styling with an element selector, right? So let's give some style here to say maybe background color. Background color we have black. Let's give a black background color. And let's change the color of the text and make it white. So let's say white. All right, so let's check it out. Okay, so you can see here that the background color is now black and the text is white for the second paragraph. But for the first paragraph, background color is black, but the color of the text is red. This is because of a phenomenon or terminology called specificity, which I'll still go into details in this class. So specificity, let me just write it. Let's say specificity, right? So we'll talk about specificity in a bit, but let's not get distracted. We're still going to specificity, but this paragraph, styling within the head tag, remember, that's the second form of styling. And I did say that within this style tag, you can style your element, you can style your, another thing you can style is what we call, you can style attributes. So asterisks, element styling, You can style. Okay, so let's talk about ID first. ID selector. ID selector. So if we come here to this paragraph, or let's just make a new element to demonstrate the let's just say so what do we use? Let's use a heading. So heading, maybe heading 4, H4, right? So we want to demonstrate ID styling. So so this heading, let's just say this heading demonstrates ID styling. So in a few minutes time, I will just take a pause and probably get to take questions if there are any. All right. So this heading demonstrates ID styling. And remember that attributes are written in the opening tag, right? Attributes are written here. So H4, let's write an attribute ID. And I did say that ID is used for styling. It's an attribute that is used for styling. There's another one called class, which I'm still going to demonstrate. So ID equals to, let's say, I don't know, maybe heading 4. So let's say heading 4. So remember, if you want to do style with an ID, you need to make sure that you have the exact name, right? The value of the ID is what you are going to use to style. So remember, we have an ID attribute, we have an equal to sign, we have opening quotation mark, then we have the name of the ID, and we have a closing. And like I said, this name of ID is arbitrary, meaning that you are the one that decides what name you want to give to the ID, right? So it's not by default. There's no default value for it. You are the one that would choose what value you give to it. And just to make it semantic or to make it look reasonable, you would always want to give an ID of, like, the value of your ID should be something that relates to probably the content of what you have in this tag. So that helps for readability, right? So if you're reading through your code later, it helps you to know, or it helps you to stick to your brain that this heading 4 is actually for a particular H4 that I created in my HTML while coding, right? So I have a question here. Okay, so Harry is asking, is it a must for the words to be in small letters? So it's not a must for the words. Okay, so when you say words, I need to understand, do you mean words? Is it the tag? Is it the attributes? Is it the value? Is it the text inside? I really need to understand exactly which one you are referring to. But just to explain, just to give an explanation, a general explanation, tags are usually in small letters. All tags are in small letters. You would always see that. Then comments, these are comments. In a comment, you can use any type of case, whether uppercase, lowercase, capitalize. You want to capitalize the first word. That's for within a comment. You can make it anyhow you want it. Then on line 34 is actually another tag, which is usually written in small letters. Then attributes, which is like we have style attributes here, are usually written in small letters. This ID, small letters also. Then, of course, you can see even the value of the name of the style is actually a small letter. Value is small letter. Next one, small letter. Value, small letter. Right. Then within the within the tag where I wrote this is a paragraph. So it's you can decide to make it capital letter if you like, but why it's best to go this way is because there's a style that could always transform your text, right? You could transform your text to, you want to capitalize, you know, make it lowercase, or, you know, whatever you want to do. So it's good to have it small letters and control how it displays. So let me just give you an example. So for this line 35, it's actually this way. First word, we have capital letter for the first letter. The rest are, you know, lowercase. So let's say within our style tag, we can say there's what we call text transform. Text transform. So look at the various options within text transform. So you can capitalize, right? You can make it lowercase, none, you know, you can make it uppercase. So let's capitalize and see. So we are going to test each of these so that you just get to see. So let's say we want to capitalize. So if we say capitalize, so what are we styling? Let's see. P, okay, the first P. All right. So you can see here, this is a paragraph. So the first letter of each word is actually capitalized, right? So you don't need to manually write this in your in the content here, in the text content. So you can just write it in small letters and use this CSS property to control what you actually want. Because yeah, so you can capitalize, you can make it uppercase, uppercase, right? You can make it uppercase, and if you check, everything goes, you know, in uppercase, right? This is a paragraph, everything goes in uppercase. If you say lowercase, lower, that's still on that text transform, right? So you see everything goes here in lowercase, right? So, so there's no rule to say that it has to be all lowercase. However, just to let you know that normally it's best practice to write your HTML code in lowercase by default, then actually use the text transform property to transform it to whatever you want. Yeah. All right. Yeah, so let's go ahead. Okay, so I'm trying to demonstrate styling with an ID, right? ID selector. So we've given this heading 4, and just so that you will not make any mistake, like I did say, you can actually copy the value of this ID, which is heading 4. You can copy it, Control C, and go to your style tag, right? And just drop it there. But remember that ID selector starts with an hash. Then you drop it there, heading 4, open your curly brace, press enter. Then you can now start styling inside or within the curly brace. So here you can say, let's say text transform. Okay. Or let's say text align. Okay, great. Text align. Let's align our text to the center and see how that comes out. So you can see our text automatically gets to the center. So we've just demonstrated how to use an ID to style and to include your styling, you know, using an ID to style within your style tag, right? So we talked about element selector first, noun ID. So next, let's talk about class. So there's something called class selector. So let's say class selector, right? Class selector. Class selector. All right, so yeah, so that's the next class selector. So let's still go down to our HTML code. let's include still a heading. Remember capital small letter. So H, let's use H5 to demonstrate this. So we can say this is a heading that demonstrates the class styling, right? All right, so we can do that. And within our H5, as usual, we'll have the attribute called class. So still, like I said before, for class, there's no default value, right? So you're the one that would choose the value. So, but in this case, we want our value to reflect what we are doing on this line of code so that it makes it human readable. So class, you can say, I don't know, what are we going to give? Let's say heading, I don't know, maybe let's say heading 5 if we want to use that, or we can say class heading, class underscore heading, right? Class underscore heading. So, or heading class, anyone. So let's just copy that. Let's get to where we have our style. And here, just to note, class selectors start with a dot, right? Dots. Then you Control V, you just drop the name of the class because you don't want to make a mistake. If there's any mistake, your style will not apply, right? So, so you have the curly brace, enter. Then within here you have let's see, what styling do we want to give? Background color. Maybe we change the background color. Or, okay, let's bring in another styling. Let's say letter, yeah? Letter spacing, right? Letter spacing. So letter spacing. So let's make it 10 pixels, right? So you will see what the letter spacing style does to that text. Letter spacing 10 pixels. So let's check it out. All right, so you can see letter spacing. So this is what letter spacing actually does. It gives more, it actually gives space between each of the letters of that particular element. So as you can see, this is what it does. If you increase the pixels, you will see how it looks like. Maybe you want it to be 40 pixels, 40 pixels. Of course, you would see, right? So this actually looks awkward because you can't make a meaning from this. So, but just to let you know that this is what letter spacing does, so you can take it back to 10 or you make it 5. Okay. So let's see 5 pixels and all right. So you see what 5 pixel does for letter spacing. And all right. So that's class. I just demonstrated class, how we could use class selector to actually style our element. Right. So what other selectors do we have? Universal selector. All right. So let's talk about universal selector. Universal selector. So still going to our style tag. So let's talk about next is universal selector. So please feel free to drop your questions at any point in time you have a question. So if you drop it in the chat, then I would be able to just see it and respond to it. I think that would be fine. All right. So universal selector. So how are universal selectors written, or how is it written? So it starts with an asterisk. Then you open your curly brace, and from there you impute your style. So universal selector, as the name implies, styles everything. It styles every single thing. Any style you give to universal selector is actually going to apply to every single element on your web page, right? So, so universal selectors are actually used for, maybe you want to give a universal or maybe a uniform styling to every part of your web page. If that applies, then you can use universal selector. So for example, we need this universal selector. Let's say we want to set the, we can decide to set the fonts. Maybe we want to set the fonts of our web page. So, font is uniform. We can say font family, right? This is how you actually add a font to your web page. And already you can see different suggestions here, right? A whole lot. Depends on the kind of font you want to use. So you can go with, let's see, Segio UI. Sans serif. Sans serif. Okay, so just to explain, for font family, so we say Segio UI, sans serif. So what is sans serif? Sans serif is still a font family, but it is a fallback font in this case. Fallback. So you'd see that we write the sans serif without quotation mark of any sort. But the first font family, we actually put it in quotation mark, and we have a comma after that. Then we have sans serif. So why do we have this? So Segio UI is the main font we want to use. But what we are saying is that if our code gets to display in a browser that cannot load Segio UI, for example, for any reason, then it's going to fall back to sans serif. So sans serif is just basic, right? As you can see, even from the pop-up here, it said H12, Firefox 1, Safari 1, Chrome 1, Internet Explorer 3. So it just tells you browsers that support this, right? Or browsers that will definitely load this. So sans serif is very general, right? And Segio UI, of course, you might have browsers that, or maybe the font may not have been downloaded immediately. The website is loaded, for example, and from there, the default font that is going to show is going to be sans serif. Until when that download happens, Segio UI will now apply to your web page. So that's why we have this. You can have as many. You can have Segio UI and have, you can have another one and say maybe Arial, as many as. So if the browser cannot load this, it can load this, it can load this. More like just giving different options for display. Calibri, you can make it Calibri. There are a lot of fonts out there. You can check them out. Or you can select from the ones that you see from the Emmet abbreviation. You can just select, right? So let me show you again. So when I said fonts family, so yeah, so from this fonts family, you can see there are a lot. So you can choose Korea New, Franklin Gothic, Lucida Sans, Segio UI, Tahoma, Times New Roman, and all. There are just a couple of them, right? Just to let you know. All right, so let's say you want to apply these fonts to every part of your code. You use the universal selector. So that actually trickles down. So let's see. So is this, let's see, is that the Segio UI? Okay, so let's try something else. Font family. Okay, let's try one of these default ones. Let's see, maybe Cambria. Okay, so let's disable this by commenting it out. So font family Cambria, Cochin, Georgia Times New Roman serif. Okay, so you can see it has taken up that font. Yeah. So you can choose from the existing fonts that you see from the Emmet abbreviation. These are not things you need to, really cram in your head. It's something that if you're using VS Code, immediately you type, the options just come out and you can actually choose, right? So, so like I said, with this universal selector, you can see here in our code that every single text now carries the font family. So universal selector applies the styling to every single element on our websites or HTML documents. All right, so you can do a couple of other things, maybe background color. Background color, you want to set it to maybe chocolate, for example. So do you see? Everywhere you're going to see chocolate, but you won't see chocolate for these ones. This is a paragraph, these two. And I'm going to explain to you why just in a bit. It's still around specificity. I talked about it. I'll talk more about it later. So, but just to let you know that this universal selector. All right. So what's the next selector that we have? We actually have so you can group, or before then, let's have attributes. So let's talk about attribute selector. So you can style using an attribute, right? So let's say attribute selector. All right. Okay, so using an attribute selector, so we actually have to, okay, so let's create something that gives us that ability. So let's say inputs, for example, inputs type text. Remember, input is self-closing. So let's say type of input is text, for example. So automatically you would know that the type that we have is an attribute, right? Type is an attribute. Okay, let's have up to 3. Okay, so let's have up to 3 just so that you will see the difference. Inputs type equals to, so the first one is a text. Let's have number here. All right. So input type text, input type number. Let's do another one. Input type, maybe password. Password. All right. So let's see how that shows up. Let's see the 3 inputs. So these are the 3. 1, 2, and 3. So I'm just going to comment out the chocolate background so that we'll be able to see clearly what we are doing here. So where we had the universal selector, let's comment out background color of chocolate so that Yeah, so we'll be able to see our input boxes. So we have this, right? We have the second one, we have the third one. Okay, so we want to style, we want to demonstrate attribute selector. Okay, so let's do this. Inputs. Then after that, we have square brackets. Square bracket this time, square. So you can say type equals to. So remember, we had different types here. We have input type text, we have input type number, we have input type password. So let's say type number. Let's style the number, the input that has the attributes type number. So let's say number, input type number. Then after that, we have our curly brace as usual. So what do we want to do? Okay, so let's say padding. So padding, let's say maybe 50 pixels. 50 pixels. Okay. What else? Maybe border. Let's give it a border, just so that it will be different from others. So border, let's say 2 pixels. Solid. Solid brown, maybe. So this is actually the syntax for border, right? So after border, you're going to have the 2 pixels controls the thickness, right? 2 pixels controls the thickness. Solid, what does solid do? Solid just gives it a solid style. There are actually different styles, which of course I can show you here. Then the next is color, right? So, but let's see how 2 pixel solid brown shows up first. All right, so you can see here, we style the attributes. So you see that it is only the one that has input type equals to number that takes up that styling, as you can see here. So that's called attribute selector. Okay, so I have a question here. All right, Daniel Coley is asking, he said, kindly help me recall the 2 extensions required for real-time display of our code outputs on the live server. I'm using a new system. Yeah, so the 2 extensions I talked about are live server or live preview, right? So if you come to extensions here, like I said, just type live server. So we're actually using live server, live server. So you can see that's the first one that comes out here. So you click. Mine is enabled, so that's why you're seeing disable and uninstall. But if you are getting it for the first time, then you definitely see the link here would be to install, right? So you just install it. Second one is live preview. Live preview. So this is the second one, live preview. So live preview helps you to preview your websites within your VS Code without going to the browser. So I already also have it installed, but I'm currently not using live preview. I actually prefer live server, right? All right, so let's go ahead. So we're talking about attribute selector, and I did mention that for border, this actually is how the syntax is written. First one is for the thickness of the border. Second one is for the style of the border, while the third one is for the color. So I could just come here and say, instead of solid, I could say dashed, 2 pixels dashed brown. So let's look at it. So you can see how the border looks. It's dashed. There are other styles or other border styles. I think there is a dotted. So dot set. So of course, so you can just play around. This CSS is always good. Play around with CSS, look at different stylings, how do they play out and all of that. So yeah. All right. So, but I would like to keep it at solid. Let's leave it at solid. All right. So this attribute selector. We also have, so this is me just demonstrating the types of selectors that we have without getting distracted with any other thing. So we have attribute selector, then we have group, CSS group selectors. All right, group. All right, so Oluchi is asking the universal selector, what exactly does the font family do? Okay, so the font family helps you to set the fonts for your website. That's what the font family does. It helps you to set the fonts for your website. So of course, I did show all different types of fonts. Okay, so this is Cambria. So if we want to, we can check out another type. After font family, you know, let's say Segio UI. That's the font I actually wanted to use initially. So let's see. So this is how Segio UI looks like, right? If you change it again to another one, you see how another font looks like. Control Z. So let's have colon. So let's try maybe Trebuchet. Let's try Trebuchet MS. So let's see. So you can see how Trebuchet, look at how the G looks like, right? And so if you like it, of course, go for it. So it depends on what you want. Okay. So that's really what it is. And you know, the other ways you can bring in, you can actually bring in external fonts and attach to your website, right? But for now, let's focus. Yeah, so let's focus on CSS group selectors. So group selectors is like you can just, you know, have different elements together and style them. So for example, you can say maybe all P's. Okay, so we've already started P's. So let's not go to P's. So let's say maybe H1s, maybe H2. So I'm just showing you that you can style as many things as possible. Maybe input, right? You can even bring in input tag here. And I don't know, any other one. Okay, let's include paragraph now. So this CSS group selectors actually happen at the point where you want all of this, maybe you want all the H1s, all the H2s, all the inputs and all the P's on your website to actually have the exact same styling. So that's where you group it. So when you do this grouping, whatever style you give to, whatever style you write here, is going to apply to all your H1s, all your H2s, all your inputs and P's, right? So it's just telling you that, oh, this is the way you can group. Maybe you want all your H1s to have all your H1s and H2s and input and P, for example, to have same styling. So you can group them together using separating them with commas. And from there, you can give the styling. So maybe we want to font size. Let's play with the font size. So maybe font size, you want to say font size to be, let's really make it bold, 50 pixels, for example. So let's see how that works. So I believe this 50 pixels, this one is 50 pixels. This one is not, you can see. is because of specificity, which I'll still explain. But you can see here, our input has taken that 50 pixels. So if we type, anything we type here, you can see, this is actually 50 pixels, right? So if we put something here and type, anything we type is 50 pixels. Why? Because we equally type the input. Okay, so this did not change, and I will explain why. But this changed. This did not, and this did not. So I will still talk about I'll talk about specificity in a bit. So, but just to demonstrate CSS group selectors. Okay. So what other type of selectors do we have? So we have something like child selector. Child selector. Child selector. All right. So for child selector, let's do some. Okay, let me type a new HTML in order to demonstrate how child selector works. So let's assume we have a list. So remember, in our previous classes, we've talked about lists. You can check out the videos if you've not. So we have ordered lists and unordered lists. So let's play with ordered lists, OL. So this is how the syntax is written. And within the OL, we actually have list items, LI. So it depends. What's the list? Maybe list of countries in Africa, for example. So we can have Nigeria. Maybe that's what we want to do. So we can have lists. We can have, that's in Africa, Kenya. We can have lists. We can have Cameroon. So we can have Cote d'Ivoire. Cote d'Ivoire. Okay, so let's so let's just say we have these few list items, listing some African countries. And we have the parents here, which is OL. OL is for ordered lists, right? Ordered list. And within the ordered list, you're going to have the list items, right? So we want to demonstrate how child selector works. So from this code, right, you can see that OL is a parent to LI, right? So because LI is within the LI tag or the LI element is within this OL tag or OL element, if you want to call it so. So that's why this one will become a parent to this because it is within it. So, but now if you go up, you see body, right? So body, if you want to ask what is the parent to OL, the parent to OL is actually body, right? So body is a bigger container. OL is a child, right? Then LI is a child of OL, while OL is a child of body, right? So so you can just, one of the ways you can know that is by, you can come here on your VS Code to your left and just click this. There's a button to collapse here, so you can click it. So when you click it, automatically you're going to see OL, and everything inside OL is hidden. So it tells you that OL is actually the parent, and every other thing within OL, they are children, right? Or descendants, but children, because direct children. But if within this li. We now have another one. Maybe we have span. For example, we say span. So remember when we talked about span, what span is used for? Span is actually used to style a selected portion of text. So you want to give a separate styling to a particular part of text. So you just bring in span. So as you can see that we have Nigeria here, but we brought in span after NIG. So just to still demonstrate what span does, or to serve as a refresher, if you say style, you can actually change the color of ERIA, the remaining part of the text. You can change the color to maybe chocolates or any other color, right? This is line 63. So you can see it here. So where is it? So you can see it here. Maybe this is the kind of effect you want to get on your code or on your text. Maybe you just want a part of it to have another color, a part of it to have a particular color. So this is actually how you achieve it. You bring in a span, right? You bring in a span in between where, to start from where you want to start and stop where you want to stop within that text. Okay, so in this case, OL is actually the parent, LI is the child, span is equally a child, right? Span, child of LI, LI, child of OL. So, but let's continue. So I'm demonstrating child selector. So from here, what we can do, we can say, so we can go up to our code here to say OL. Remember, OL is the parent, right? So it starts with parent. Then after that, you have right angle brackets. So that tells you that, oh, you want to target the child. So OL, then you zero in on the LI. So LI is actually the child. OL is actually the parent. If you even put your cursor here, you're going to see, right? You see, you're going to see something like this. OL, meaning that OL is parent, LI is child. So you can even see. All right. So from here, we have our curly brace as usual. Then we can give a particular style. So whatever style we give is going to apply to all the list items within the parent OL, right? So let's say we want to say, maybe we want to say, okay, let's do text transform, for example. Let's say, or okay, let's use another type of styling. Let's say text decoration. Text decoration. So you can see here, there are a lot of options for us. So maybe we can just demonstrate it, just few of them to see how they work. So you can see underline, right? Underline. So let's see. Right. So you can see all the list items are underlined, right? So you have Nigeria underlined, Kenya underlined, Cameroon underlined, Cote d'Ivoire underlined, right? So this is how you target the children. So with this line of code in our CSS, we've just been able to add same styling to all the children within this OL, right? Instead of styling them one after the other. So that's actually makes sense. So any other styling you want to try, you can try. Maybe instead of underline, you want to say dashed, maybe dashed. Dashed. Okay. I think we have dotted. Let me see. So why is this not working? Let me see. Okay, so text decoration. So let's say line through. Let me just see. Okay, line through. All right, so but you can actually play around just to let you know that this is how chart selector actually works. All right. So at this point in time, let's go to specificity. Yeah, I've been talking about specificity. You know, while some styles will apply, some will not. So what is specificity? So let me just let me define it here to say okay, so let's just say so specificity determines, so you can say it determines the order. You can say order of priority for applying styles, right? So that's what specificity just means. It actually determines the order of priority for style application or for applying of CSS styles. So let's give examples. So in the order of priority, highest priority, okay, so how do we put it? So priority ranges from, okay, low, how do we put it? Low to high. Okay. So let's say, all right. So let's say we have asterisk, maybe we have high. This is just trying to demonstrate priority. So we have high. So we are going to have four classes. So let's say high, medium. So medium, then would have, so we'll have low. So let's use something like this. So we want to have four classes. So of course, we know high is the peak, medium. So I don't know what other term we want to use. We need it to be 4. So
low.
Sorry, you said?
Low. High, medium, low.
Yeah, we need it to be 4.
Yes.
We need it to be 4.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Intermediary.
Intermediary. Okay, so so let's say low. Let's just say, okay, so I know what to do.
High,
Yeah,
medium,
so
normal,
let's
low.
high, medium, normal, low. Okay, so that makes sense. But I think there's something that came to my head. Lower. Okay, so let's not go with my own. High, medium, normal, low. Okay, so let's have normal here. Normal. All right. Okay. So this is just the priority, right? This is the order of priority. High, medium, normal, low. And of course, you should understand this in English, right? So this is going to take the topmost priority, followed by medium, followed by normal, followed by low. So I'm just going to give the categories within each of these, or the examples within each of these categories, right? So for the high, we have inline. Oh, sorry, let me just continue to comment. All right, so also what I could do, okay, so let's just go ahead. So for the high, we have inline styling, right? Inline styling. So let me try to just separate it, just make it have a little bit of difference. Yeah, I think something like this. So under high, we can even number it, right? We can number it just so that it makes it very distinct. So that's 1. So we have 2. Then we have 3. Then we have 4. Right. So under high, of course, you have inline styling. Under medium, you have so you have under medium, you have IDs, right? IDs. ID. Okay, let me just say ID or IDs. IDs. Okay. Then normal, you have so you have so within normal you have classes, right? Classes. You have pseudo classes. Then you have attributes selectors. That's why I had to first talk about selectors so that from there we'll be able to group them. Yeah. So we have classes, pseudo classes, attribute selectors. So I'll still talk about them in a bit more detail. So we have for low, so this is just priority, remember. For low, we have elements, we have pseudo elements, elements, pseudo elements. So what this means, to explain, what this just means is that where in your HTML code, right, where you have inline styling, is going to take the topmost priority, right? Inline styling, topmost priority. So for example, remember, so where we had here, let's go back. We had this P on line 100, and we had this actually inline styling. So where we had this inline styling, we said color should be brown, font size should be 30 pixels, text transform should be lowercase. In fact, let's even make it let's make it uppercase so that will really stand out. Uppercase. I need it to really stand out. Right? So this is what we gave to it. So this inline. Then we came here to our styles and we said P, right? We said P should also have a font size of 50 pixels. And that particular P, where we gave a style of color, this is it. This particular P that is uppercase, it didn't take the 50 pixels font size. It rather took the 30 pixels font size that we gave to it in the inline style, right? Even when we said all paragraphs should have a color of white. Remember, let me show you. Yeah, so on line 11, right, you can see line 11. We said paragraphs have a background color of black and have color white. This is a paragraph, but it still did not change because of specificity. Right? So this takes the topmost priority. Anywhere in your HTML that there is an inline styling, any other style you apply by any other means will not work. It will not apply to that particular element or set of elements if there are many. So just to let you know. But you might ask, so why did we have the background color change to black? Right? So the background color changed to black. And that's what we gave on line 12, because we said all paragraphs should have background color of black. And the background color of black actually took place. It applied to this particular paragraph. So why? So it's simply because within the inline styling, let's go there again. Let's go there. This is line 100, right? So within the inline styling, we did not set the background color, right? We didn't set the background color. So the background color, so it's going to take, so if there's any other styling that applies to this line 100, it's going to take it. But any other thing that is contained within the inline styling will take priority. So if we came to our inline styling and we said, oh, make our background color to be blue, for example, maybe blue violet. So what are you going to see? It will take the priority of this inline styling. So you can see the background color is blue violet. So it didn't apply the black again. It changed to blue violet. Why? Because inline styling takes the highest priority, just to demonstrate. All right. Okay, so we said the second one is medium, and medium is for IDs, right? IDs. So anyway, you have an ID attribute, ID. So you see ID here. So to really explain this one, let's do this. This is ID on line 105, this heading 4. So let's attach a class to it. So let it have an ID and a class. So remember, in our priority, ID, look at it, ID takes higher priority than classes, right? So let's give one particular element, let's give it an ID, and let's equally give it a class, and let's style the ID, and let's equally style the class, and let's see which one is able to take precedence. So remember, we're on line 105 here. We have an ID of heading 4. So let's give it a class. Let's give it a class, and let's say maybe heading 4. We can still give it heading 4 class. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because we are going to use a dot to style it. Remember, we use dot to style classes, and we use hash to style heading. So even though you have same name for the class, there will still be a differentiation. Or, okay, so instead of heading 4, let's do this. Heading, then FOUR, right? Let's do this. Just so that will be very clear in our explanation. All right. So heading 4, right? So let's style it. Let's go up to our style. So I want to style it very close to where we had the heading 4, yes, where we had the ID. So let's put it here and say dots heading 4. What's heading 4, right? So let's have our curly brace. And remember, we said for the ID, text align should be center, right? So let's come to heading 4 and oppose it, try to oppose it to say text align. Make it, let's say, start. Okay, so another thing we could do, let's add font size to this. And for the ID, let's make font size to be maybe 16 pixels, right? 16. Then for the class, let's make font size to be 50 pixels. Let's just make it very big. So we want to see there's a great difference between 16 and 50. So let's see which one applies. So you can see it did not change, right? It didn't change. It still took the, so we gave it font size of 16 pixels. Sorry. Let me be sure of which one we are looking at here. Okay, so this is line 111. Okay, so the text that has this heading demonstrates ID styling. So this is it. This heading demonstrates ID styling. So we said, let the font size, look at it, for the ID. Let the font size be 16 pixels for the ID, but for the class, we said font size should be 50. So what happened? It took 16 pixels. It didn't take 50. But remember that if in our ID, we never had a font size property, it's going to take the font size of the class. So let's say here, let's comment it out. Let's comment 16 pixels for the ID, and we have 50 for the class. So do you see? It takes 50 because in our ID, we've disabled the font size. So it's going to automatically take the font size for the class. Since we have attached both an ID and a class to the same element. Right. Okay, so I have a question here. Let's check it out. So Emmanuel is asking, can one also be able to add shadow for our heading? Yeah, you can add shadow. Okay. Can one be able to add shadow for our heading? Yes, you can. You can. All right. So I'll demonstrate that. So, but let's continue. Yeah, so just to let you know about the order, right? Okay, so we have medium, normal. So we have something like pseudo classes. Pseudo classes. Remember, I did explain attribute selectors, but I've not talked about pseudo classes. So let's just quickly just look at pseudo classes, just so that you can see what is a pseudo class. So let's style something here and say, so what we want to do is a pseudo class, okay? So let's say we want to attach that pseudo class to this particular element here, this paragraph. Let's go there. Let's identify. Okay, so let's attach it on this line 110. Line 110. This is a second paragraph. Okay. But with that, let's give it an ID. An ID. And say maybe second paragraph. Second underscore paragraph. Okay, so let's copy it. So we want to demonstrate pseudo class. So paragraph, so it starts with an hash. Then we have Control V. We copied it, so we are just pasting it. Second paragraph, right? So curly brace. Yeah, so we want to demonstrate pseudo. So let me put it here to say pseudo class, right? Pseudo class. So how is pseudo class written? So normally you would normally see stuffs like this. Pseudo class always comes with a colon. Then you are going to have I don't know, maybe like hover. You can have hover, right? You can have hover. So this is the syntax for pseudo class. You are going to have the selector, whatever you are selecting. Maybe you are selecting an ID, you are selecting a paragraph, like, using a paragraph, which is an element selector, or attributes, any other kind of selector, right? So you have that selector. After that, what follows is a colon, right? A colon follows. Then you now have the value of the pseudo class. So there are a lot of pseudo classes like, I don't know, like, so we have stuff like hover, we have visited, right? So we have visited, we have checked, you can check them out, try to test them out. We have so what else we have? Focus, right? We have focus if you're working with inputs. All right, so we'll test some out here so that you see. So we said hover, second paragraph, hover. So let's say background color. So when we hover, what do we want? We want something that will just be very visible for us. And let's say chartreuse, for example. Okay, so let's demonstrate background color chartreuse. That's for this second paragraph. So when we hover, this is what it actually means for this pseudo class. It means that when we hover on this second paragraph, we want the background color to change to chartreuse. That's the meaning. So let's check it out. Okay, so you can see this way my cursor hovers over it and the color changes. Right. So that's just an example. So that's a pseudo class. Okay, let's do focused. So you can always try out the rest, but let's do focus. So focus is actually used for input. But before then, I have a question here. Okay, so not a question. So let's go ahead. So you want to use focus. So just hold on. Let's go to the inputs. Inputs, right? So we can just style the inputs directly to say inputs. Remember, styling the input directly is an element form of styling or selector. So after input, we can bring in our colon and we say focus. Focus. So when we focus on our input, what do we want, right? So you can say maybe border. You want the border to be 2 pixels or you want it to be really big. Maybe 4 pixels. Solid blue. No, let's not use blue. Let's use green. Green, right? So you can actually use any color. So you're going to go to where you have inputs. Remember, these are the places we have input. So when you place, so you can see that when you put your cursor on focus, you are actually focusing, right? It actually changes to green. You can change it to yellow, 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 or any other color, but just to show you. So if you focus here, do you see that yellow color? Focus here, you see yellow. So this outer blue is actually what is there by default, but what you have applied is the yellow, and you can see it here. So if you click here, of course, you will equally see the yellow, right? So that's part of Studio class. That's what it is, and that's how the behavior looks like. You can actually try the rest. You can try visited, checked, and many more. But just to let you know that that's what it is. So that's the third priority. Remember, we had inline styling, IDs, classes, pseudo classes, and attributes. So the last are elements, right? The last are elements and pseudo elements. So remember this pseudo class. So let's just talk about pseudo elements quickly. So pseudo elements, right? So here we have, so let me demonstrate. Okay, so let's say list. Let's use this list item. For example, list. All right. So let's say list, li. Remember, so li, so you can style li, right? And all the li's will be styled, right? So you can say list li, you can say before. So remember that after the name of the selector, you're going to have double colon 2 times. This is the difference between pseudo element and pseudo class. So you have colon 2 times or 2 colons. Then you have like before. So let's add something before. Pseudo elements are actually used to add contents. Either they actually used to add, add content to an existing element, right? So you can say before. Just, you are going to see how this plays out. So when you say before, you say content. There has to be a content that you want to add. Remember, we talked about list of countries in Africa. So, so we can say, let's just say a typical country in Africa is, let's do this. So these are contents. So we can now say color. Color, let's make it maybe blue, right? Yeah. So how does this play out? So pseudo elements, remember, they are used to add content within the HTML element. So that's why you have this syntax, name of selector, double colon, then you can now have before or after, right? Those are the most common. There's also first letter. You can try that one out, first letter. So let me list them. So pseudo elements like, so you have before, you have after, you have so first, okay, even have first letter. There's a whole lot. So you can just try it out. First letter. So, but I'll just try before and after and show you. So you can always try out others. So before, let's check it out. So can you see this? We used that pseudo element to add text to this existing list, right? Let's actually remove this strike through. I'm not comfortable with that strike through. Probably we can give it an underline. I think underline will make it look better. Underline, yeah. Then that will be better. All right, so then this is better. So you can see we use that styling to add text before. And remember that was our content, right? Where we said a typical country in Africa is, then Nigeria. A typical country in Africa is Kenya. A typical country in Africa is Cameroon, and the rest. So this is actually how you can add, use pseudo elements to actually add contents before. And you can also add content after, right? So you can still with the list. You can add to paragraph or any other thing, but still with the list, you can say, okay, let me demonstrate with something else. What else do I use to demonstrate? Let me see. Let me use this line 125. Let me use this paragraph and add something after. So it has an ID of second paragraph, okay? An ID of second paragraph. So you say hash second underscore paragraph. Then you have your double colon, remember? So you want to add something after. So we'll give our contents, right? Contents, let's just say maybe, let's give space, or let's say comma, and say this is a new content, then full stop. Okay? Then after that, let's do something with, or maybe let's work on the background color. Background color. So I'm just using colors because colors are very visual. So it's easy for you to understand the difference. Okay, so we've added a content to say this is a new content. We've given it a background color of crimson. So you can see, right? So where you had, this is a second paragraph, you have comma, then you have this is a new content. So I added that using the pseudo elements method or pseudo element styling, right? All right. So yeah, so I think basically that's that. Except there's any question. If there's no question, we'll just we'll proceed. All right. So if there's any question, you can always drop it on the chat box while we continue. We have just a few minutes more. So let's go into box model and layouts. Box model and layouts. All right. So before I start, let me just let me show you something. Box model and layout. So let's inspect, right? Let's inspect this page. Inspect. All right. So let me show you something. I'm still going to bring out my own, but let me just do this. Okay, let me zoom in. Okay. So you can actually see this. This is actually what box model looks like. I'm still going to create some boxes so that you would see, but just to let you know, this is your content, right? This is how the box model looks like, or this is how layout looks like on your browser. So it's important to understand this, because when you understand this, it helps you to know, when you add a padding to your element, what's the effect of the padding? When you add a border, what's the effect of the border? When you add a margin, what's the effects? The space that is created around it. What's the interaction between one element and another element? That's actually very important. So this is the content by default. Anything beyond the content, or you can say from between the content and the border, is called padding. Between your content and your border, you have padding. After your border, or you can say between your padding and your margin, you have a border. Then beyond your border, the spaces around your border is actually called margin. Right. So this is actually very important. You have a content. Padding is what comes after the content. Border comes after the padding. Margin comes after border. All right. So let's do more. Let's do some illustration. All right. Okay, so let's still on our code, or in our code, we want to illustrate box model. So we want to illustrate box model and layout. Box model and layout, right? So box model and layout. So let's just create a div, div. So div, within the div, we want to say this is my content. All right. So okay. So let's give it an ID so that we can style it. ID. Okay, so just to explain, just in case I didn't explain, the difference between ID and class. Because of course, as you can see that ID gives styling, right? Class equally gives styling. So you might ask, what's the difference? If I want to style, should I use an ID? If I want to style, should I use a class? So the main difference between ID and class is that your IDs should be unique, right? So let me type it. Let me just type it here so that when you get a hold of the code, you'll be able to see that explanation. All right. So difference between let's just say BTW between an ID and a class, right? Is that IDs it's a must be unique across your HTML page, right? IDs must be unique. So while classes can have a repetition, Okay, so repetition, yeah. Okay, so IDs must be unique across your HTML page, while classes can have a repetition. So what do I mean? So for example, this is OL, right? So you can give an ID to OL ID, and you call it list, for example. But if you come to LI, let's say you want to give styling, for example, you want to just give individual style attributes to each of these lists, right? So what you should just do is just to say class. You can say list item, for example. Then you come here and you say class and you repeat it, list item. So why are you doing this? You are doing this so that when you want to style, you can just say list item. And when you say list item, it's going to, whatever style you give to list item is actually going to replicate down here, like it will propagate and the same style will show up here. However, remember that you have one ID for the parent. Then the children can have same classes, right? List item. Then you come here and you have class lists item, right? So you have an ID list. So it is only this ID of list that exists in my whole HTML code. And it's expected to be only this ID. It's expected to be only this. But for classes, you can repeat if you like. This is just me repeating. I can decide to change. I can say the class here will be list item. Maybe I can make this one list item 1, right? Come here and say list item 2. Come here and say list item 3. Come here and say list item 4. It's my choice, right? I can still leave it at list item. Just leave it list item, list item, list item, list item. So, but why am I doing this? Why am I repeating this? I'm repeating this because these are list items. And I feel that whatever styling I give to the first list will most likely be the same styling for the second one, will most likely be the same styling for the third and the last. So that's why I can decide to give class list item, right? I can equally decide to give it an ID. If I don't want to use a class, I can say ID. I can change all the classes to ID. But if I change, then I need to differentiate between the first list item ID and the second one. So I can now add maybe list item 1, list item 2, list item 3, list item 4. So that differentiates each of the IDs, right? So list item 1 is unique because it's only this line 115 where we have list item 1. We don't have it anywhere else. So please make sure that you have that understanding. Make sure that your IDs are unique across your HTML page, but your classes can be repeated. So that's an important difference. All right, so box model and layout. So we have a div here, and let's give it an ID. Let's give it an ID and say my maybe box. You can say box maybe underscore model. Right, so you can copy this, come to your style and say hash. You drop it there, box model. All right. So with this, you can give a width maybe 200 pixels. You can give a height maybe 200 pixels. Let's make it a square. Then let's give a border to say maybe 10 pixels. So that'll be too much. So let's say maybe 5 pixels solid. Gray. Let's say gray. Right. Let's give a padding. So remember, padding maybe 50 pixels. Let's give a margin. Say 50 pixels. All right. So let's check this out. How does this look like? Let's look at our box. So this is the box. You can see this is the box with this is my content. So by default, right? Okay, so let me inspect. Just let me explain by inspecting. Let me inspect. This is very important that you understand. Then let me come here, click on this, and bring my cursor. So, okay, so you can see where my cursor is for that particular box. So if you look at here, if you look at the box, you are going to see first thing. I'm not shifting my cursor because if I shift it, this pop-up box will disappear. But I just need you to look at it. From the beginning, you have div hash box model. Remember, that's what we have in our code. Div, we have hash. We gave it an ID of box model. So look at the dimensions: 310 by 310. So how come? Remember that we gave it a width of 200 pixels. And we equally gave it a height of 200 pixels. So, but the browser is telling us that the total width of this box is 310 pixels. And the total width, the total height is equally 310 pixels. So how come? So by default, right, this is what your browser does. It adds, when you say padding, right, whatever padding you give to your content will add to the width and height. Whatever border you give will equally add to the width and height by default, but the margin does not add. So let's go to the code and let's go to the code. So let's write it as a comment so that when you look at the code, you'll be able to understand. Okay. So you're talking about true width. So we can use the word true width. What's the true width of the content? Or the true width of your content? The true width of your content is the width, right? Width plus what? So is width now. So plus padding left if there is, plus padding right if there is, plus border left plus border right. Okay, so let's see if that works. So what is the width? True width. So what's the width? 200 pixels, right? So 200 pixels plus padding left. So look at it. We have padding of 50 pixels. So when we say padding of 50 pixels, please note that the padding is distance round. Immediately you just say padding only. You say padding 50 pixels. What you're saying is that padding left, give me 50 pixels. Padding right, give me 50 pixels. Padding top, give me 50 pixels. And padding bottom, give me 50 pixels. So what this means, so when you say padding 50 pixels, you are saying that distribute 50 pixels of space around my content to the left, to the right, to the top, and to the bottom. So with that, it means that to the left, you have 50 pixels. To the right, you have 50 pixels. Okay? So what else? The next is border. Border left, border right. So same thing with border. So when you say border 5 pixels solid gray, you are saying just give me a border around my content, 5 pixels each. 5 pixels to the left, 5 pixels to the right, 5 pixels to the top, 5 pixels to the bottom. Right. So plus 5 pixels of the border to the left plus 5 pixels of the border to the right. So that equals to 310 pixels. So this 200 plus 50, that's 250 plus 50, that's 300 plus 5, 305 plus 5, 310. So that's what gives it 310 pixels. So whereas you had given the width, you've told it to be 200 pixels, probably unknown to you that your div is not actually 200 pixels. In reality, it's 310 pixels, just to let you know, right? And you can do same for height, right? It's the same thing for the height. So that's actually CSS box model and layout, and that's actually very important for you to know. So this margin does not add anything to the width. Margin is just space around the container. So let me go back. Let me close this. Let's go down. So this is the content. This is the div. So you would see that there is space. Every other item that I typed started from the border, like started from the left part of the my browser, right? But only this gave some space. It gave some space to the left, gave some space to the top, gave some space to the right, gave some space to the bottom. So the space around here, all this space here is actually margin, while this thick line round is border. Before the border is padding. So there is a padding here before this content. So this is actually box model and layout, how it is. This is the content. This is my content. After the content, you have padding, right? After padding, you have border. And after border, you have margin. So Margin does not contribute to the height or width, but border does. Border does contribute. Padding equally contributes to the width and height. So this is actually very important for you to know. But if maybe while you are coding, you don't want this kind of default behavior, this is the default behavior for every browser. If you don't want this default behavior, right, just go to your body. You can go to the universal selector where we had universal selector here, right? And you say, you can come to the universal selector. Remember, I say universal selector is for everything. You can say border, box sizing. Yeah, box sizing. Yeah, box sizing. So you can say border box. Border box. So what does this do? When you say box sizing border box, what you are telling the browser is that don't add any extra width and height to my content. Rather, subtract that extra from the width of that particular box. That's what you are telling your browser. Don't add any, I don't need you. If I give a box 200 pixels, I want the 200 pixels to be 200 pixels. Any other thing that should add to my height or to my width, subtract it from the 200 pixels. That's what you are telling your browser. So immediately you have box sizing border box. Either you apply it to the body tag, because when you apply it to the body actually propagates to every part of your code, or you use the universal selector, right? So you can style body here, for example, and say maybe body, right? And you put box sizing border box here if you like, or you use the universal selector. Both of them still works. So let's check it out. So we said box sizing should be border box. So let's look at it. This is our box. If from what you can even see, the box has reduced. So, but let's inspect and look at the true width and the true height of this box. So, so let's click on this. So let me put my cursor. Yeah, so can you see? We have div as box model. So you can see that the width is 200 pixels and the height is 200 pixels. So every other thing that should have added to the width and height has been subtracted from the 200 pixels, is contained within that 200 pixels. So there's nothing external or nothing extra, right? So just to let you know, so some people while developing their codes, they actually do, they like to put this box sizing border box because they don't want any extra space or width or whatever. They just want, if they are giving their elements 20 pixels, they want it to be 20 pixels, right? They don't want the browser to add any extra thing for them. So it's something you can do. People do it. You can do box sizing border box, or you just go ahead without that, right? So but I think it's something you may want to do, because if you are giving 200 pixels, you expect that content to actually be 200 pixels and not more. Yeah, so I think we'll stop here and we'll entertain questions if there are any.